The mountain is peak and full of theories.
They come by water, before dawn. 6 narrow boats moving through the gas street basin without lamps, running on the knowledge of men who have navigated this canal network in every condition of light and weather, and do not require illumination to know where they are. The only sounds are the soft knock of timber against timber, and the patient drip of water from the steering poles, and the occasional low instruction passed between boats in the Romani tongue, not whispered, spoken at the volume of men who know the difference between noise that carries and noise that doesn't, which is a distinction learned young and kept for life. Birmingham at 4 a.m. is reduced to its skeleton, the forge hammers on the Faisley cut, persistent, indifferent to the hour. A dog somewhere in the factory district, making its case about something. The specific hollow note of a boat horn 2 miles east, signaling a lock approach. These sounds have no connection to each other, and no connection to the 6 dark boats moving through the basin toward Charlie Strong's yard, which is exactly as it should be. They moor with the economy of long practice, ropes dropping onto bollards in the dark without ceremony, the boats settling against the wharf timber with barely a knock. 27 men step onto the yard's cobblestones, and the yard absorbs them. The dark swallows them. The familiar smell of the cut and the coal and the horse dung of Charlie's stables folds around them. And they are simply there, the way the canal is simply there, the way the factories are simply there. Present without announcement, Esme stands at the bow of the lead boat in a long, dark coat, watching the city's lights break apart on the canal surface. Birmingham reflected in black water, the factory glow on the far bank becoming orange fragments, becoming nothing, becoming the surface of the cut again. She watches this until the boat is fully moored, and then she steps onto the wharf without assistance and looks at the yard with the expression she wears when she is cataloging everything simultaneously, which is the expression she wears most of the time. John is waiting at the wharf steps. They stand close, speaking in the register that belongs only to the two of them. The specific low frequency of a husband and wife who have been having the important conversations quietly for long enough that quiet has become their natural volume for anything that matters. What passes between them stays between them. 2 minutes of it. When they step apart, Esme's chin is up by a fraction, and John's jaw carries the set it carries when he has absorbed something difficult, without arguing about it, which is not his default and costs him something visible. Callum Lee comes off the 3rd boat, Esme's uncle in the Romani accounting of the word, which is more expansive than the Gorgio version and encompasses more history. He is a man of 50-something built for the work he has always done, which is the work of a man who has been in one form of conflict or another since he was 14 and has never found a compelling reason to stop. The record of this is on him, a nose broken and reset by people who were not trying to reset it, a left ear with a notch taken from the upper rim, hands that are large even by the standard of large hands, which is a standard that has itself been set high. He looks at John. The look is an assessment. It takes 4 seconds and covers everything. The sling, the way John is standing, the quality of John's attention, whatever it is in a man's face that tells another man whether the man in front of him is worth following. He nods. 1 nod. Right, he says. What do you need? Tommy finds out at 7 a.m. John is in the garrison's back room with Callum and 2 Lee senior men, a canal map spread on the table, the tea gone cold at the edges of 4 mugs. When the door opens and Tommy walks in, he takes the room in without moving through it. The map, the 4 men around it, Callum's presence, the canal routes marked in pencil, the notations in John's handwriting along the margins. He stands in the doorway with his hat on and his coat on, and the specific stillness of a man whose mind is running several calculations at once, and whose face has been instructed to show none of them. Arthur, he says, wait outside. Arthur, who has come in behind Tommy, looks at John, looks at Tommy, and goes back through the door with the practiced neutrality of a man who has spent a lifetime knowing which conversations to absent himself from, and has elevated the knowledge to a professional skill. Tommy comes to the table. He looks at the map. He looks at Callum, who looks back at him with the absolute equanimity of a man who is in the right place at the right time and knows it, and does not require Tommy Shelby's confirmation of either fact. Outside, Tommy says to Callum. Callum looks at John. John says, "Give us a minute." Callum and the 2 Lee men go. They do not hurry. The door closes. Tommy takes his hat off and puts it on the table and looks at John with the expression he wears when he has determined that anger would cost more than precision and has chosen precision. "When," he says, "last night, before I came in, you sent for 30 Lee men without telling me." 27. John. "You told me not to attack," John says. "I haven't attacked anything. I've made a telephone call to my wife and arranged for resources to be in place for when they're needed. The same as you arranged for Aberama Gold, without asking my opinion on it." "Aberama Gold is one man," Tommy says. "That, a gesture toward the wharf, toward the canal, toward the 27 men currently occupying Charlie Strong's yard, is a different thing entirely. It's 27 men who know every cut and arm and towpath between here and Coventry better than Luca Changretta knows the back of his own hand." John's voice stays level. Not performing calm, actually calm, which is new, which Tommy registers without showing that he registers it. It's 30 if you count Callum, which you should, because Callum Lee in a confined fight is worth 3 of anyone Changretta brought from New York. And who commands them? The question drops into the room and stays there. Tommy says it at the same volume as everything else, which is how Tommy makes a word carry weight, not by adding volume but by removing everything that would dilute it. John meets it. I do. The fire in the garrison's back room grate ticks. Outside, the yard, the movement of the Lee men establishing themselves, the quiet industry of people who know how to occupy a space without being visible in it. Tommy looks at his brother. The calculation behind his eyes is present the way deep water is present. You see the surface moving, you cannot see the bottom. Changretta has professional killers, he says. He has American money and an organization that runs on hierarchy and discipline. If the Lee men do something that is not disciplined, something that brings police down on Small Heath, something that kills a civilian, it is not Callum Lee who answers for it. It is not Esme. It is this family. It is this operation. Do you understand me? Yes. And who answers for it? I do, John says. Same as always. Tommy picks up his hat. He looks at it for a moment. He puts it back on. He goes to the door and stops with his hand on the frame. Esme runs the intelligence, he says. Not Callum. Callum fights when fighting is called for. Esme thinks before the fighting is called for. He opens the door. That's not a suggestion, John. He goes. John looks at the canal map for a moment, at the penciled routes and the marginal notations, at the geography of a city that he has known his whole life, and that the Lee family has known longer. He calls Callum and the Lee men back in. He tells them what Esme is going to do. Callum receives this with the expression of a man who was told exactly this by Esme herself before the boats left the camp and has arranged his face in advance accordingly. Esme takes 4 days. Her method has no name in any language Tommy Shelby speaks. It is the method of a people who have been reading landscape and human movement for generations, not through documents or informants or the formal intelligence apparatus that Tommy constructs, but through the accumulated practice of people who survive by understanding their environment better than the people who want to control them. She sends the Lee women into the Digbeth neighborhood first. Not the men, the women, who buy bread from the local shops and collect water from the standpipes, and speak with the other women who do these things, and in this way acquire the kind of knowledge about a street that no surveillance operation produces. Who lives where? Who doesn't fit? Which buildings receive deliveries that don't match the pattern of the business they're supposed to be? On the evening of the 4th day, she comes to a house on Garrison Lane that the Shelbys use for meetings, and sits across the table from John with a piece of paper that has 5 observations on it in her small, precise handwriting. 3 men in a warehouse on the Digbeth Canal arm. Not shooters, logistics men, the ones managing money and communications, a cash reserve. Coded ledgers with addresses and operational details. John reads it. He reads it again. You want us to take the ledgers. I want you to take the ledgers and the money and leave the men breathing, Esme says. Dead men stop talking. Frightened men who've been robbed and marked keep talking to anyone who will listen, and what they say reaches the people you need to hear it. We use them as a message. We use them as proof. She takes the paper back. Luca Changretta needs to understand that we can reach into any room he puts his men in. He needs to understand it not because someone told him, but because his own logistics men are standing in front of him telling him it happened and they didn't see us coming. She folds the paper and puts it in her coat pocket. That's more frightening than bodies. Bodies he can account for, this he can't. John looks at her across the table. Esme does not look away from things she has decided, which is a quality he has spent 7 years being grateful for. Right, he says. We go tonight. The warehouse. 2 a.m. The canal arm runs directly behind it, a 6-foot wall between the towpath and the building's rear yard, which 4 Lee men who have been going over 6-foot walls since childhood, clear in the time it takes John to assess the wall and make his decision. He goes last. The shoulder communicates its position on 6-foot walls in terms he cannot ignore. He ignores them. Inside, 2 lamps burning low, the smell of damp stone and machine oil and the particular staleness of men occupying a space they didn't choose and aren't comfortable in. 3 men at a table, the ledgers open, the cash box beside them. 1 man writing, which he stops doing when the Lee men come through the side door, and John comes through the back simultaneously. It is brief. There are no weapons drawn in time to matter. 3 logistics men in a room that is suddenly full of people who arrived without sound find that their options have become very limited very quickly. And the further limiting of them happens without anyone firing a shot. Because noise in the Digbeth Canal arm at 2 a.m. is an unnecessary problem, and everyone in the room understands this without being told. John takes the cash box. He takes the ledgers. He looks at the 3 men against the wall, 2 of them young enough to still be surprised by what their professional choices have led them to. 1 of them old enough to know exactly what has happened and what it means for every plan Luca Changretta has built around the assumption that his Birmingham operation is invisible. John speaks to the oldest one. Tell whoever you report to that the Shelby family sends its regards. He picks up the cash box. Tell them we were in this room tonight, and we went through everything in it, and we chose to let you walk out. He moves to the door. Tell them we'll make a different choice next time. Out through the side door, the rear yard, the wall, John goes first this time, which costs him, which he does not show. The towpath, the canal, gone. 12 days later, Michael intercepts a telephone message. He brings it to John at the Shelby Company offices on a Thursday afternoon, a fragment of a call between 2 numbers he has been watching, a Changretta logistics line and a Birmingham contact in Moseley. The message is partial but sufficient. A motor car that evening, Watery Lane, 4 men inside, a show of strength, drive-through, be seen. John does not go to Tommy, he goes to the canal map. By 6 o'clock, 3 Lee men with Lee Enfields are positioned in the roof of a canal-side factory above the Watery Lane Bridge approach, the bridge where any vehicle coming from the Moseley Road must slow to take the turn. John is on the towpath below. He has given the instruction twice, and Callum has given it once more in his own terms. No kills. Holes in the car. Nobody inside the car takes a round. The car comes at 7:30. It slows for the bridge. 3 rifles from the factory roof, staggered, not simultaneous, in the deliberate rhythm of men who have been told to be careful and are being careful. The windscreen, the bonnet, the rear near-side tire. The car slews and stops, and the 4 men inside are alive and uninjured, and sitting in a vehicle that is comprehensively unable to complete its demonstration of Italian presence on Watery Lane. John watches from the towpath. He does not move. He gives them the time to understand the geometry of the moment, that they came into this neighborhood and were already known, that they were stopped before they started, that whatever they thought they understood about the ground they were driving on was missing a variable. Then he walks up the towpath into the dark along the cut, hands in his coat pockets, and the canal water moves beside him the way it always moves, patient and continuous and indifferent to the specific concerns of the men on its banks. Arthur is at the garrison when John returns. He looks at John. He looks at the expression on John's face, which is the expression of a man who has done what he planned to do and found it worked, and has filed this without making a production of it. Arthur has been watching this expression develop across the last 3 weeks, and each time he sees it, the surprise is slightly less and the something else, the thing that is not surprise, that is closer to recognition, is slightly more. He says, "He's thinking, Tommy. He's actually bloody thinking." Tommy does not look up from the newspaper he is reading by the fire. He turns a page. "Don't mention it to him," he says. He'll stop. Outside, the canal moves through Birmingham. The Lee men are in the margins of the city, in the spaces between the things that show up on maps, doing the patient invisible work of people who have always known that the ground belongs to whoever understands it best. The cash from the Digbeth warehouse is already being used. The ledgers are already being read. The addresses in them are already being watched. The war has changed shape, and Luca Changretta does not yet know it. The drive to London takes 2 hours and change on roads that move between motorway confidence and rural uncertainty without much warning. Tommy drives. John is in the passenger seat with his arm out the window despite the cold, watching the landscape change, Birmingham becoming the Midlands Flats, becoming the gathering density of the home counties, the sky contracting as they move south, the horizon filling in with telegraph lines and rooftops, and the particular quality of light that collects above a city of this size. He has been to London before, many times. He has no strong feelings about Camden specifically. He has strong feelings about Alfie Solomons, which is different and which he has been keeping to himself since Tommy told him he was coming. The motor car rattles over a section of road that needs attention, and John's shoulder registers its opinion. He moves his arm back inside the window. Tommy has been quiet for 40 minutes, not the planning quiet, the other kind, the kind that means he is in a part of himself that the planning doesn't reach, which happens occasionally and which John has learned not to interrupt because the thing that comes out of Tommy after that kind of quiet is usually worth waiting for. Grace, John says, not a question. Tommy is quiet for another mile. Then, yes, I'm sorry, Tommy. Yes, the road, the fields giving way to the edge of London, the first terrace rose, the factory smoke thickening, a gasometer enormous and rust-stained above the rooftops. She was the best of us, John says. For whatever that's worth, it's worth something, Tommy says. He looks at the road. His hands on the wheel are steady, which is where Tommy puts things he cannot otherwise manage, into the hands, into the driving. She made me want to be better than I was. That's a thing a person can do for you. Not many people do. John says nothing. The London streets are closing in around them now. Do you have that? Tommy says. Esme, yes, John says. Without hesitation, not the same way. But yes, Tommy nods. He looks at the road. He does not speak again about it, because Tommy does not speak about things past the point where the speaking is useful, which is a discipline John has never fully acquired, and has instead learned to work around. They drive the rest of the way in the quiet that is not the planning quiet, and is not the other kind either, the quiet of two brothers who have said something true to each other and do not need to build on it. Alfie Solomons' bakery in Camden smells of actual bread, which is the first thing you notice, and of the rum that is being processed somewhere below the floor level you're standing on, which is the second thing, and of Alfie himself, which is the third thing, a smell compounded of pipe tobacco and sawdust, and the particular earthiness of the Grand Union Canal 2 streets west, which in November carries with it the cold of moving water and the coal dust of the narrowboats that use it. He meets them in the bakery's main room, which is large and warm and full of men doing work with flour and ovens. In the way men do work when the work is real, and also entirely beside the point. Alfie moves through it with the specific ease of a man in his own space, expansive, gesturing, talking before they have fully entered the room. Thomas, he says, you look terrible, mate. I mean that with respect. Obviously, the kind of respect you give a man who's been through something, which you clearly have. John. The eyes move to John, quick and assessing, and then settled into warmth that may or may not be entirely genuine. You're alive, then. Wonderful news. Genuinely, sit down, both of you. Ezra, bread, please, and something to drink. And don't bring the stuff we sell to the public. Bring the actual stuff. They sit at the long table in the back of the bakery. Ezra brings bread and 2 glasses of something amber that is considerably better than what gets sold at the counter. Alfie sits across from them with his own glass and his pipe, and the particular quality of a man who has arranged himself to conduct a conversation on his own terms and is now conducting it. John eats the bread. He watches Alfie. The meeting runs on Alfie's rhythms, which are not straight lines. He discusses scripture, a passage from Ezekiel which he finds relevant to the current situation in ways he explains at length, and which John follows at the level of the words, while his attention is elsewhere entirely. He discusses the relative merits of 2 different rum barrel sizes, and why the larger one is not always better, which is a metaphor for something, but John cannot immediately determine what. He discusses, with apparent casualness, the state of the Changretta situation, what he has heard, what the word is in London's East End, what the Italian community there is saying about Luca's Birmingham campaign. Tommy listens and responds, and navigates Alfie's conversational geography with the practiced ease of a man who has done this before and knows that the geography is the point, that Alfie is most honest when he appears most aggressive, and that the straight-line version of anything Alfie says is less true than the meandering version. John watches. He notes 3 things. The first, a man stationed near the bakery's rear exit who has no visible function. He is not working. He is not eating. He is standing with his back to the room in a position from which the front entrance is visible in his peripheral vision, not watching the interior, watching the approach. A lookout, not for police. The position is wrong for police, who would come through the front, for someone expected from outside who Alfie does not want arriving without warning. The second, when Tommy says Luca Changretta's name, in the context of explaining what the Shelbys need from Alfie's East End contacts, Alfie's right hand, which has been resting on the table beside his glass, tightens. Not much. The fingers close fractionally and then release fractionally, and the hand returns to its resting position. It takes less than a second, and Alfie does not pause in what he is saying. John clocks it the way he clocks the things that are wrong in a room, automatically below the level of conscious decision. The third, Alfie asks twice, with the casualness of a man making conversation, when Tommy intends to return to Birmingham. The first time, Tommy gives a general answer. Within the week, things to manage. The second time, Tommy gives a slightly different version of the same general answer. After the second answer, Alfie's eyes move briefly, a quarter second involuntary, to a framed photograph on the back wall. The photograph is angled in such a way that the glass of it catches the room's reflection, which means it can be used to observe the room without appearing to observe it. John files all 3 items. He does not change his expression. He does not stop eating the bread, which is genuinely good bread, which he is genuinely eating. He shakes Alfie's hand on the way out and looks him directly in the eye and smiles. Alfie holds the eye contact for a moment. He smiles back. His smile is warm and complicated and does not reach whatever is happening behind it. John follows Tommy out through the bakery's front room and into the Camden Street, where the wind off the canal reaches them with its smell of coal water and stone, and the particular cold of a London November that has nothing in common with Birmingham's cold except its temperature. The sky above the rooftops is gray and still. They are 20 minutes out of Camden on the return road when John says he's talking to Luca. Tommy drives. The road unreels ahead of them through the outskirts of the city. On what basis? Tommy says. John lays it out. The man at the rear exit, the position of him, the sight line, not for police, for an expected arrival. The hand on the table when Luca's name came up, the photograph on the back wall, and the angle of it, and the specific moment Alfie's eyes went to it, which was the moment after Tommy declined to be specific about his return to Birmingham. Tommy listens. He does not interrupt. When John finishes, he is quiet for a moment, and the quality of the quiet is the planning quiet, the kind that means he is running the information against his existing model and determining where the contradictions are. The man at the exit could be police-related, Tommy says. Alfie has ongoing difficulties. The hand could be a habit. He's handled that table 1,000 times. The photograph, Tommy, John says. Tommy drives. I know you and Alfie have history, John says. I know it's not simple, and I know he's been useful, and I'm not asking you to believe me because I'm your brother. I'm asking you to believe me because in the time I've been working in this family, have I ever told you a man was bent when he wasn't? Tommy is quiet. There was the Moseley job, Tommy says. 1923. You were certain about Donnelly. And was he? The road, the fields, a crow lifting from a fence post and settling again. Tommy does not answer. Which is the answer? John looks out the window. He does not say anything further about it. He has made his case, and the case is made. And adding to it now would be the old John, the one who kept pushing past the point where pushing was useful, who needed to hear himself acknowledged before he could stop. He does not need to hear himself acknowledged. He needs Tommy to do what he does with the information, which Tommy will do at the pace Tommy does it. 40 miles pass. Then Tommy, if he's talking to Luca, he'll need to give Luca something credible, something he could only know from us. Yes. Which means we give him something credible that isn't true. Yes. And we see what Luca does with it. Yes, John says. That's what I'd do. Tommy is quiet for another mile. Then, Arthur. We use Arthur. A location, a time, a reason for Arthur to be somewhere specific that I tell Alfie in a follow-up call this week. He does not look at John when he says this. He looks at the road. If Changretta men show up at that location, we know. And if they do, then we know. Tommy's voice carries no particular weight on this. It is the voice of a man stating a fact that will produce further facts. Then we deal with Alfie separately. John nods. He says nothing more. He looks at the countryside moving past the window, the fields, the hedgerows going bare, the occasional farmhouse set back from the road, with its smoke going up straight in the still afternoon air. He does not make anything of the fact that Tommy listened. He does not note it aloud or register it with any visible satisfaction. He files it the same way he filed the 3 things in Alfie's bakery, completely without appearing to. The call to Alfie happens on Thursday. Tommy, from the garrison's back room, tells Alfie that Arthur will be at a specific warehouse off the Digbeth Canal arm on Saturday evening at 7, a meeting with a supplier, legitimate business, an hour at most. He tells Alfie this in the context of a broader conversation about supply routes, woven in naturally, the way you weave in something you want overheard. Alfie receives it with the warmth and digression of a man who is not filing anything, which is how Alfie always receives things. Saturday evening. The warehouse. 7 o'clock. The Lee men are in position before 6. 12 of them, canal approach and road approach both covered. Arthur is not at the warehouse. Arthur is at the garrison with Linda, who has come for the evening and who Tommy has encouraged to come with a specific invitation that is the most elaborate misdirection Tommy has ever constructed around his brother's social calendar. The warehouse contains 4 Peaky Blinder men and 2 Lee men, waiting in the dark with the patience of people who have been told exactly what is coming. 3 Changretta men arrive at 7:10. They are intercepted in the canal approach before they reach the warehouse. They are not killed. They are relieved of their weapons and their identification, and return to wherever they came from with the message that the Shelby family is aware of the arrangement and considers it closed. Tommy calls John from the garrison at 8:30. He says only, "You were right." John says, "I know. Don't make a thing of it. I already have," John says, "in my head. We're moving on." The line hums between them for a moment, the specific quality of a telephone connection in 1925, which is never quite clean, always carrying a faint echo of distance. "Right," Tommy says, "moving on." He hangs up. John holds the receiver for a moment before he replaces it. He looks at the wall above the telephone. The particular unremarkable wall of a hallway in a house on Garrison Lane that has been a Shelby meeting house for 3 years, and carries on its walls the specific accumulated residue of everything that has been decided in it, which is invisible but present, the way most important things are. He goes to find Esme. He does not tell her that Tommy said he was right. He tells her that the warehouse worked, and that the Alfie question is answered, and that they are moving to the next phase. She listens with her complete attention, and asks 2 precise questions, and nods at the answers and goes back to what she was doing, which is reading the Digbeth ledgers for the 3rd time, looking for patterns she has not yet found. John watches her read for a moment. Tommy said, "Well done," he says. "About the canal approach, the intelligence work." Esme does not look up from the ledger. "Did he? He said not to tell you he said so." "Then why are you telling me?" John thinks about this. "Because you should know," he says, "that it's being seen." Esme turns a page. The lamp on the table catches her face in profile, the line of her jaw, the specific quality of her concentration, the woman who has been the most useful person in this war, and who has been doing it from the margins of a room that does not always remember to look at its margins. "I know it's being seen," she says. "I don't need Tommy Shelby to tell me." She keeps reading. John goes back to work. Aberama Gold arrives on a Wednesday morning and makes the garrison feel like a smaller room than it was. He is not a large man in the physical sense, not Arthur's kind of large, not the size that announces itself by displacement of air and furniture. He is medium height and lean in the specific way of men who have kept themselves lean professionally, who have maintained the body as an instrument rather than a presence. What makes the room smaller is something else. The quality of his stillness, which is not the stillness of a man at rest, but the stillness of a man who has made a decision not to move yet, and the word yet is the operative word. And anyone in the room with functioning instincts feels the yet without being able to name it. He comes in without knocking. He sits without being invited. He puts his hat on the table rather than the rack by the door, which is a small thing in which John, standing at the bar with his tea, notes and files in the way he notes and files everything about a new person in a Shelby room, which is completely and without appearing to. His son comes in behind him. Bonnie Gold is perhaps 20, with the specific physical quality of a young man who has been fighting competitively since he was old enough to, and has not yet accumulated enough losses to know they are possible. Quick and contained, with the unconscious economy of movement that belongs to boys who have been trained young. He takes the room in the way his father takes it, which is the same method in a younger frame, and finds the wall beside the door without being told to find it. Tommy makes the introductions. Aberama receives Arthur's nod, with the minimal acknowledgement of a man who is not here to make friends, and is not pretending otherwise. His eyes move to John with the specific quality of a man performing a professional assessment. Not hostile, not friendly, the eyes of someone determining what category of problem or asset the person in front of him represents. John says, "A gun for hire is only as useful as he's trustworthy, and a man for hire is not trustworthy by definition." The garrison goes quiet in the way it goes quiet when something has been said that cannot be unsaid. Aberama sets both hands flat on the table. He does this slowly with the deliberate patience of a man deciding between several available responses and selecting the one that costs the other party the most, without costing him anything. His hands on the table are the hands of a man who has used them for things hands are not designed for, and putting them flat and visible is not a gesture of peace. It is a gesture of a man who wants you to see his hands and think about what they have done. "Say that again," he says. The Scottish in his voice is a long way from the surface, flattened by years of moving between places, but present underneath the way a geological layer is present underneath the surface soil. "And I'll make you regret the bullet that missed you." John says, "Any time, no heat in it, no lean forward, no shift of weight toward the threat." He says it with the flatness of a man making a genuine offer, an open diary, an available appointment. He holds his ground at the bar with one hand resting on the wood, and looks at Aberama Gold with the look of a man who has already decided something about this person, and is simply waiting for the relevant events to confirm it. Bonnie, at the wall, does not move. His eyes go to his father, and then to John, and then to his father. He has the specific discipline of a young man who has learned at considerable personal cost when not to move. Tommy says, "John." John picks up his tea. Tommy sends John out of the room before the money is discussed, which is the correct decision, and John accepts it as such without making a production of his acceptance. He takes his tea through the garrison's main room and out the side door, into the yard, and stands in the November cold, with his collar up. He thinks about what he has just said, and whether he was wrong to say it. The answer he arrives at, 10 minutes of standing in the yard, watching the canal beyond the wall, watching the factory smoke on the far bank, is that he was not wrong about the substance, and was probably wrong about the timing, which is a distinction he is only recently capable of making, and which still requires conscious effort rather than coming naturally. The substance. A man for hire sells capacity, not loyalty. Loyalty accrues through shared history, shared risk, shared grief, the specific chemistry of people who have been through things together and have come out the other side still standing. Aberama Gold has none of that chemistry with the Shelby family. He has a fee and a professional reputation and a skill set, and the fee can be matched by anyone with sufficient funds, and sufficient funds is not a quality the Shelby family holds exclusively. This is true. John is right about this. He is also aware, standing in the cold with his tea going cold in his hand, that being right about a thing and being strategically right about the thing at this moment are different calculations, and that Tommy, who has made the navigation between those two calculations his primary operational skill, has been trying to give him this distinction for longer than John has been willing to receive it. He goes back inside. Tommy is waiting for him in the back room. Aberama is gone. Into the city, into the specific operational invisibility of a man who moves through other people's territory without leaving a legible trace. Bonnie has gone with him. The map of their movements will be known only to Tommy for now, which is how Tommy prefers his assets. Singular, controlled, running through one channel. Tommy has his cigarette and his expression, and the particular quality of focused attention he deploys when he has something to say, and has allocated the time to say it precisely. Aberama Gold, he says, is my asset, not yours. You talk to him once more the way you talked to him today, and I'll have you running the Lee boys somewhere quiet while the rest of us finish the war. Do you understand me? Yes. Good. He draws on the cigarette. The lamp on the sideboard throws his shadow large against the back wall. Now tell me you know I'm right. I know you might be right, John says. about using him now. I know he's useful now. He sits in the chair across from Tommy. Not the chair of a man making himself comfortable, the chair of a man who intends to say something and is finding the right start for it. But I'm not wrong about what he is. That's not the same as being wrong about using him. No, Tommy says, it's not. He looks at John with the specific attention he gives things he is reconsidering. Can you tell the difference between being right about a man and being right about what to do about a man at a specific moment? John looks at him. Being right about Aberama Gold doesn't mean doing something about it right now is the right move, Tommy says, because right now he's useful. And the moment you make him feel like he's not valued here, the moment you make him feel like he's working for a family that's looking sideways at him, he starts looking at his other options. And his options include people with money who would very much like what Aberama Gold knows about this family's operations. Changretta, John says. Anyone with money and a reason to want us damaged. Tommy stubs the cigarette. Your instincts about men are good, John, better than you know. But an instinct acted on too early is just impatience with a story attached to it. John sits with this. The fire, the lamp, the muffled sound of the garrison's midday trade through the wall. The ordinary noise of Harry's pub doing what Harry's pub does, indifferent to whatever is being decided in the back room. I won't talk to him like that again, John says. Good, in front of you. Tommy looks at him. A beat of assessment, checking whether this is a joke or a position. John's face gives him nothing useful, in front of anyone, Tommy says. Right. Tommy stands, he goes to the door. Then, without turning, the canal map, the Digbeth approach. He stops. Esme's. Most of it. Tell her it was well done. He opens the door. Don't tell her I said so. He goes. John sits in the back room for a moment, alone with the fire and the lamp, and the specific quality of a conversation that did not go as he expected, and has left him, unexpectedly, with more than he came in with. He assigns 2 Lee men to watch Aberama's movements that afternoon. He does this quietly, without documentation, without telling Tommy. He chooses 2 of Callum's cousins, men who are capable and incurious, and understand that receiving an instruction from John Shelby means carrying it out rather than questioning the reasoning behind it. He tells them what he wants, where Aberama goes, who he meets, what hours he keeps, whether the pattern of those hours changes, and in what direction. He includes Bonnie in the brief, where the boy goes, who he meets, whether father and son separate for any significant period. He does not explain why. He does not examine whether this is the right thing to do for very long, because the examination keeps arriving at the same place. Tommy said, do not speak to Aberama that way. Tommy said nothing about watching him. The distinction is uncomfortable, and John is aware that it is uncomfortable, and he holds it as what it is, a calculated tension between his own judgment and the established structure, managed at the lowest possible level of visibility. Acceptable because the alternative is leaving a variable unmonitored in a war where unmonitored variables have already tried to kill him once. He tells himself this is different from disobedience. He tells himself this once, and then stops telling himself anything about it, and simply makes sure the 2 Lee men know what they're doing. Aberama's first operation is on a Friday. A Changretta lieutenant named Sartori, one of the New York men, brought over specifically for this campaign, experienced enough to be genuinely dangerous, and senior enough to be genuinely costly to replace. He keeps Thursday evenings at a public house in Edgbaston. Alone. 40 minutes. 1 drink. The consistency of it is the kind of consistency that becomes fatal in a man's profession when the wrong people begin to map his patterns. Aberama Gold maps the pattern in 3 days. John receives the report from Michael on Saturday morning. He reads it at the kitchen table in the house on Garrison Lane with a cup of tea he forgets to drink. Sartori. Friday, Edgbaston, clean, professional. Deniable. Bonnie, according to the same report, was across the city entirely. A clear, documented distance from the operation, which is itself a professional decision on Aberama's part, keeping his sons separated from the work. He puts the report down. He sits with the specific internal experience of a man whose prediction has been contradicted by events. Not the external experience, not the version you show other people, but the private version that happens in the body before the mind has caught up with it. The recalibration, the slight loosening of a held position that was held tighter than it needed to be. Aberama has done what he was hired to do, cleanly, without complication, and the Changretta organization in Birmingham has lost one of its 3 most effective senior men in a single night. John thinks about Tommy's question, can you tell the difference? He thinks about what difference means here. Being wrong about this outcome does not mean being wrong about the underlying risk, which is a separate thing and requires a separate response. And the response continues to be the two Lee cousins watching Aberama's movements, because one successful operation does not change what a man is, it changes what a man has done. These are different categories. He picks up his tea. It is cold. He goes to find Esme. She is in the yard behind the Garrison Lane house, talking to Callum in the Romani tongue. A rapid, low exchange that John has enough of after 7 years of marriage to follow in its broad shape, if not its precise detail. Callum sees John coming and concludes whatever he was saying and goes inside with the easy discretion of a man who has been reading when to leave rooms his whole life. Esme looks at John. She reads his face in the way she reads his face, which is completely in about 1 second. It worked, she says. Not a question. Aberama's job. Yes, and you're wondering if you were wrong about him. I'm wondering, John says, if being wrong about one job means being wrong about what he is. She looks at him with the level attention she brings to everything. Not warm exactly, Esme's attention, but without distance. The attention of a woman who takes people seriously enough to actually look at them. Those are different questions, she says. I know. Do you? I'm learning to, John says. That's not the same as knowing, but it's what I've got right now. Esme is quiet for a moment. The yard around them, the cold, the coal smell, the distant sound of the canal. Keep your men on him, she says. Keep them on the boy, too. One good job doesn't change what a man will do when his interests change. It only means his interests haven't changed yet. And a father with a son in range is a man with a vulnerability you don't yet know the shape of. John nods. That's what I thought. Then stop looking for permission to think it. She goes back inside. John stands in the yard for a moment. He looks at the wall beyond which the canal runs, patient and continuous, indifferent to the question of whether Aberama Gold is trustworthy or merely temporarily aligned, which are different things, and which the canal has no opinion about, and which John is going to have to hold without resolution for as long as the war requires. He goes back inside. He does not call off the surveillance. Arthur finds him that evening at the bar. He sits beside John without preamble and puts his elbows on the wood and looks at Harry's back, which is what Arthur looks at when he is building towards something he is not sure how to say. You were wrong about the Scottish fella, he says. This one job, anyway. This one job, John agrees. Tommy know you admitted it. Tommy didn't ask. Arthur nods slowly. He picks up his glass. He holds it without drinking. You know what's different about you, he says. Since the farm. John looks at him. You used to be wrong the same way every time, Arthur says. Fast, loud. Then you'd find out you were wrong, and you'd be wrong about being wrong for a while before you came round. He drinks. Sets the glass down. Now you're wrong quieter, and you come round faster, and you don't make anyone watch you do it. He looks at his brother. That's not nothing, John. John says nothing for a moment. Then, Linda been teaching you to talk like that. Shut up, Arthur says, without heat. They drink. The garrison makes its evening noise around them. Harry moves along the bar. The fire settles in the grate. Outside, the city does what the city does. Makes things, burns things, survives things. And in Charlie Strom's yard, and on the canal towpaths, and in the margins of Small Heath, 27 Lee men do their patient, invisible work. And 2 of them specifically watch a Scottish mercenary and his son move through Birmingham, and note where they go and who they meet, and whether any of it is the shape of something that needs to be reported. It is not, yet. John finishes his drink. Another, he says to Harry. Harry pours. The boxing match is held on a Friday night in a converted goods warehouse off the Digbeth Canal Arm, which is not an arena and has not been built to function as one, and makes no pretense of either. Rows of wooden chairs on bare concrete. A ring made of rope and 4 posts driven into the floor. The lighting is 3 electrical lamps hung from the ceiling joists, which is sufficient for the men doing the fighting, and insufficient for anything requiring nuance. The crowd is the crowd that attends these events. Working men with money to bet, criminal men with money to launder, a handful of sporting gentlemen from the better parts of the city who come to places like this because places like this remind them that the world is larger and more serious than their drawing rooms. The smell is sweat and cigarette smoke, and the specific damp of a building that handles freight during the week and pretends to be something else on Friday nights. Aberama Gold arrived with Tommy 2 hours before the event. Bonnie Gold went straight to the dressing room. quiet, focused, the specific interior quality of a young fighter before a fight, which is one of the few states of being where Bonnie Gold becomes entirely unreadable. He is fighting a man from the Black Country circuits who calls himself Goliath, for reasons that are evident when you see him and that make Bonnie Gold, standing across the ring from him, look considerably smaller than he is. This is a misreading of the situation. Aberama has been telling Tommy this for a week. Bonnie doesn't lose, he said, with the flat certainty of a man stating something he has observed across 20 years of watching his son fight. Not to a man that size. Arthur is in the dressing room, beneath the main floor. He has been in the dressing room for 40 minutes. He is sitting on a bench with his hands wrapped and his jacket off, and his shirt sleeves rolled, and he is looking at the floor with the expression of a man who has decided not to think about what is in the room with him, which is the knowledge that this building contains more than a boxing match, and that he is the bait in a trap that John has spent 3 weeks constructing, and which Tommy has approved in the broad strokes, and which Arthur himself has agreed to, with the specific kind of agreement that a man makes when the alternative to agreement is leaving his brothers to do something dangerous without him. He is praying, quietly the way Linda taught him, not the formal structure of it but the interior version, the running conversation with something he cannot see that he has been maintaining since Linda, which is the most private thing about Arthur Shelby, and which he keeps private with the specific ferocity of a man who knows that the things most worth protecting are the things other people would use to diminish you. He hears the crowd above him. He hears the specific noise of a fight beginning, the bell, the crowd's immediate escalation, the particular sound of two large men encountering each other's intentions at close range. He looks at his wrapped hands. He is also, underneath the prayer and the agreement and the specific discipline of a man trying to remain who Linda needs him to be, Arthur Shelby, which is a thing that exists below all of the other things and does not require conditions to be true. The dressing room door is locked from inside. John told him to lock it. He is waiting. John has been in the maintenance corridor since 6 o'clock. The corridor runs behind the dressing rooms and connects to the warehouse's original goods entrance, a wide door on the canal side, kept unlocked on John's instruction by the warehouse's owner, who has a specific relationship with the Shelby family that involves a debt and does not require elaboration. 4 Lee men are with John in the corridor. They have been here for 2 hours in the cold and the dark, with the specific patience of men who have been told what is coming and at what time, and who have nothing to do until that time except not move. John is not cold. He is running too hot for cold. The shoulder, which has been a manageable problem for 3 weeks, has tonight decided to become an unmanageable one, and he is managing it anyway with the particular stubbornness of a man for whom the alternative to managing it is removing himself from the room, which is not available. He has a Webley in his right hand, and the Leon field propped against the corridor wall to his left, which he will not use in this space because this space is too confined for a rifle, and he has known this since he chose the corridor and chose the weapons, regardless, because the rifle's presence here is not tactical, it is psychological. It is the specific comfort of a long gun in a confined space, which is irrational and which he accommodates in himself without judgment. The intelligence came from the turned safe housekeeper, Luca's logistics man, the one who has been feeding the Lee network information for 2 weeks in exchange for the continued health of his family's import business on the Digbeth Road. The information was specific. 3 Changretta senior men, New York origin, would attend the event, would access the dressing room via the service entrance on the canal side, would arrive between 9:30 and 10. John fed Luca the information about Arthur being at the event through the same safe housekeeper, running it in the other direction, letting the keeper pass it upward, as though he had gathered it independently, as though the information was his to sell. The keeper does not know he is being used in both directions. He thinks he is managing his risk. He is managing John Shelby's intelligence operation, which is a different thing, and John finds no particular moral complication in this. He checks the time, 9:30. Above them, through the warehouse floor, the crowd roars. Bonnie Gold is doing something in the ring that the crowd finds significant, which means he is winning, which means Aberama has been right about his son in the way that Aberama is apparently right about his son, and John files this too. The way he files everything. He looks at the 4 Lee men in the corridor. They look back at him. Nobody speaks. They come at 23 minutes to 10. John hears them before he sees them. The canal door, the specific sound of a latch lifted by someone who has been told the door will be unlocked and is nonetheless surprised to find it so. The brief pause of men adjusting to the dark inside after the lamplight outside. 3 of them, as promised, moving through the goods entrance and toward the corridor with the practiced quiet of men who have done this kind of work before and have a clear idea of what comes next. John lets them get 4 steps into the corridor. Then he says, "Stop." He says it at the volume of a man speaking clearly in a confined space, not loudly. The word arrives before they can process where it has come from, because the corridor is dark, and the acoustics of stone and brick are not straightforward, and in the half-second of processing, John and the 4 Lee men are already moving from their positions. What follows is not clean. Nothing in a confined space at close quarters is clean. It is immediate and bodily and produces sounds that are not the sounds of the event above them, but which are absorbed by those sounds regardless, lost in the crowd noise and the bell, and the specific vocal investment of 100 men watching Bonnie Gold dismantle Goliath in a way that Goliath's camp did not anticipate. It is 3 against 5, except that 3 against 5 in a corridor where long weapons cannot be brought to bear, and the fighting is the fighting of men in very small spaces, with very little room for anything except what their bodies know without instruction, is not 3 against 5 in any meaningful sense. It is the particular arithmetic of close work, which is different from the arithmetic of open ground. 2 of the Changretta men go down in the first 40 seconds. The third, older, more experienced, with the specific adaptability of a man who has survived similar situations before, gets past the first wave of Lee men and reaches the dressing room door, which is locked. He hits the door with his shoulder. It does not move, because Arthur has been sitting behind it for 40 minutes, and Arthur's relationship with immovable objects is of long standing. The door opens from inside. Arthur is standing in the doorway. He looks at the man in front of him. He looks at the corridor. He looks at John, who is 12 feet away, and John looks back at him and says nothing. And Arthur looks back at the man in the doorway. The man raises what he has, which is a Colt 1911, and Arthur Shelby, who has been sitting in a dressing room for 40 minutes praying and waiting with his hands wrapped and his shirt sleeves rolled, does what Arthur Shelby does when the door finally opens. He does not pray about it. The dressing room fight is 2 minutes and Arthur does not lose, which is the relevant outcome, and the things that happen in those 2 minutes belong to the specific category of things Arthur does not tell Linda about, which is a category that has its own weight and its own particular silence. After, the warehouse empties in the normal way of a boxing event concluding, the crowd dispersing, the money changing hands, the ordinary noise of a Friday night in Digbeth resolving itself back into the ambient noise of the Canal District. Bonnie Gold, having won the fight in the 5th round with a combination that Aberama will describe to Tommy the next morning with something close to paternal satisfaction, is collected by his father from the main room and gone before the crowd fully disperses. The goods entrance on the canal side is locked. Charlie Strong's men arrive at 11 to manage the rest of it, which they do with the professional wordlessness of men who have managed the rest of things for the Shelby family for a long time. Arthur is outside the warehouse in the cold. He is standing with his back against the canal side wall and his face turned up toward the sky, which is overcast and starless and offers nothing in particular, but is at least the sky, which is the opposite of the corridor and the dressing room and everything that happened in them. His shirt is untucked. He has his jacket back on but has not buttoned it. He is shaking, not from cold, from the specific physical aftermath of what his body has been through, which produces a shaking that is different from cold in its quality and which takes longer to stop. John stands beside him. He does not speak. The canal moves below the embankment wall on their left. The lamp from the warehouse's exterior throws a small circle of light across the towpath. Above them, the overcast sky. Arthur says, "I swore I was done with this." John says, "I know. God's going to judge me for that." John is quiet for a moment. The canal, the lamp. Arthur's shaking, which is beginning to slow. "Not yet. He's not," he says. Arthur makes a sound that starts in his chest and arrives in the air as something between a laugh and a breath. Brief, involuntary, the sound of a man who has been holding himself together for 40 minutes and has found, unexpectedly, a crack in the holding. He puts his arm around John's shoulders, the left shoulder. He does not know it is the left shoulder. John does not flinch. He allows it, allows the weight of Arthur's arm, allows the contact, allows his brother the gesture without the information that the gesture costs him, because Arthur does not need the information, and the cost is John's to pay. They stand like that for a while, Two brothers in the cold outside a Digbeth warehouse, the canal moving, the city beyond them making its permanent noise. Tommy arrives at 11:20. He comes through the goods entrance and finds them against the wall and takes them both in. The untucked shirt, the shaking that has nearly stopped, the arm still on John's shoulder. He reads all of it in the way Tommy reads things, which is completely and without appearing to. He says, "Good work, both of you." Arthur looks at him. John looks at him. For Tommy Shelby, in the context of the Shelby family's operational vocabulary, this is an extraordinary sentence. It does not come with qualifications. It does not come with the next instruction embedded inside it. It arrives clean and complete, and Tommy does not add to it. Arthur nods. John says nothing. Both of them receive it the way things are received when they are unexpected and genuine, with the slight adjustment of a person who was not braced for the weight of the thing and finds it heavier than anticipated. "The letter," John says. Among their items, Michael has it. Tommy puts his hands in his coat pockets, a reference to American pressure. Luca's backing is under strain. A pause. "I need to go to America." Arthur and John look at each other. "How long?" Arthur says. "Long enough. We'll manage here," Arthur says. Tommy looks at both of them against the wall. The untucked shirt and the wrapped hands and the specific quality of two men who have just done something terrible and necessary together and are standing in the cold on the other side of it. Alive, still themselves, still here. "I know," he says. He goes back inside. John and Arthur stand against the wall for another moment. The canal, the lamp, the overcast sky. Arthur buttons his jacket. He straightens. He rolls his sleeves back down with the deliberate care of a man re-establishing the form of himself, which is its own kind of prayer. "Right," he says. "Right," John says. They go inside. The news arrives on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after Tommy leaves for America. John is at the canal map in the Garrison Lane house when Michael comes in. He has been looking at the map for 20 minutes, tracing the route for the next operation, the Changretta-controlled coal merchant on the Faisley Cut, the money laundering arrangement that the Digbeth ledgers confirmed, and that represents the last significant financial artery of Luca's Birmingham operation. He has the route memorized and is now looking at the map the way you look at something you know, checking for what you might have missed. Michael comes in without knocking, which Michael does not do. Michael knocks. Michael is the kind of young man who knocks even in rooms he effectively runs. John looks up. Michael's face is the face of someone carrying something that has changed shape several times on the journey between where he received it and where he is now delivering it, and has not finished changing. "There's been a bombing," Michael says. "The Lee camp, outside Bordsley Green." John drives to the camp alone. He does not tell Callum he is coming. He does not bring anyone. He takes the Austin, the low-profile one, the car that does not announce the Shelby family when it arrives somewhere, and drives through Birmingham in the gray Tuesday morning and arrives at the camp on the Bordsley Green outskirts, where the city gives way to the kind of land that is neither city nor countryside, the marginal ground of industrial edges, scrub and disused storage and the canal arm running through it. He knows the camp. He has been here before, with Esme, with the children, for the Romany occasions that have their own calendar and their own significance. He knows the specific layout of it, the caravans in their arrangement, the fire pit at the center, the horses at the eastern edge where the ground is firmer. He gets out of the Austin and walks. The smell reaches him before the sight does. Scorched wood and something sharper underneath it. The chemical smell of blasting powder, which John knows from the war, which the body recognizes before the mind catches up. Then the sight, one caravan destroyed, a second badly damaged. The ground around them scorched in a radius that tells you the size of the device and where it was placed, and the specific cruelty of someone who knew that a camp at this hour in the morning would have families in it. He walks through it. He does not speak to anyone yet. He walks through the scorched ground and the overturned objects, and the specific desolation of a space where violence has recently been, and he looks at it with the complete attention of a man who needs to understand exactly what has happened before he is capable of responding to it. 3 Lee men dead. He learns this from the evidence on the ground before anyone tells him. The covered shapes at the camp's edge. 3 of them, the specific care with which they have been arranged, which is the care of people managing the unbearable, in the only available way. 2 women with burns to their arms and faces, being tended to in the far caravan. A child, Esme's cousin Bridie's daughter, 8 years old, who John has met at 2 Romani gatherings, and who has her mother's face and her father's stubbornness, sitting with a bandage around her head, a piece of shrapnel, a wound that the woman tending her says will heal but will leave a mark. He looks at the child's bandaged head. He stands there for a long time. Callum finds him there. Callum Lee's face, delivering the full account of what happened and when and what the camp's people believe about who is responsible, is not angry. It has moved past anger, or perhaps beneath it, to something older and colder and more complex. The face of a man who has followed another man's leadership into a disaster and is standing in the disaster performing the specific calculation of what that means and what comes next. His voice is level. His eyes are on John. When he finishes, John says, "How is Bridie?" Callum looks at him. "She'll be all right. She'll carry the scar." John nods. Callum is quiet for a moment. Then, "We're still with you, John. I want that said first, so you don't think this is what it isn't." He looks at the scorched ground. "But I need to understand what happened here. I need to understand how they found us." "They didn't find you," John says. "They stopped being able to find the men, so they stopped looking for the men." He says this at the level of a man stating a fact about himself rather than about an enemy. "I was moving faster than I'd secured the edges. I was using the camp's mobility as an asset. And I hadn't accounted for what Luca would do when mobility stopped being something he could counter." Callum looks at him. "He switched targets," John says, "because I gave him no choice. And I didn't see it coming because I was looking at the next move, instead of looking at the ground around the move I'd already made. The camp around them. The covered shapes at the edge, the child with the bandaged head. Callum's face, which is receiving what John is saying with the complete attention of a man who expected something different and is adjusting to what he got. "You're telling me this is on you," Callum says. "Yes, not Changretta. Changretta pulled the trigger," John says. "I told him where to aim." Callum is quiet for a long time. The wind off the canal arm moves through the camp, carrying the smell of the scorched wood. Somewhere in the far caravan, one of the women says something in the Romani tongue, low and specific, and someone answers her. "Right," Callum says. He does not say anything else about it. He does not offer absolution or condemnation. He turns and goes to his people, and John watches him go, and the going is the answer to the question John has not asked, which is whether the Lee family is still with him, and the answer is yes, at a cost that has been acknowledged between them without being named. John drives back to Small Heath. He parks the Austin on Garrison Lane and goes into the Garrison and sits at the bar and does not order anything. Harry puts a glass in front of him after a minute. John does not drink from it. He sits. The Garrison at midday is not empty but is not full. The overlap between the morning trade and the lunchtime crowd, the in-between hour when the room has a different quality, less occupied. The particular acoustics of a space that has absorbed decades of human noise and retains it in the walls. He can hear it in the silence between Harry's movements, the accumulated presence of every conversation this room has held, every decision, every grief. He sits in it for 2 hours. He does not drink the whiskey. He does not think about the next operation, the coal merchant, the Faisley cut. He does not think about what he is going to do about Luca Changretta, which he will think about, which he will plan for, but which is not yet the relevant question. The relevant question is what it costs to be wrong about the right thing. He has been right about the strategy, the Lee network, the canal approach, the intelligence operation. All of it has been right, and all of it has been working. And he has been moving with the confidence of a man whose strategy is working, and has missed the thing that confident men miss, which is the space between the strategy and the ground the strategy is standing on. The child with the bandaged head, Bridie's daughter. 8 years old. Polly arrives at 2:30. She does not announce herself. She simply comes in, through the front, which is unusual for Polly, who generally moves through the Shelby world through its less visible entrances, and sits on the stool beside John and looks at Harry, and Harry brings her tea without being asked, and goes to the back. She does not look at John for a moment. She looks at the bar, the wood grain of it, the specific wear of a surface that has had 1,000 elbows on it, and carries the evidence of all of them. Then she looks at him. "How many decisions have you made in the last 3 weeks," she says, "where you were the only one who knew all of the information?" John says, "Most of them." She nods. She picks up her tea. She holds it without drinking. Tommy carries all of it. Always. Every decision, all the information, all the risk, the weight of every move and the weight of every move's consequences. She pauses. And when it goes wrong, which it does, John, it always does eventually, because it always does. He carries that too. All of it. Alone. Because he decided a long time ago that no one else could carry it with him. John looks at the bar. That's not strength, he says. That's just loneliness. Yes, Polly says. Yes, it is. Both things. She sets her tea down. He chose it because he didn't believe anyone could carry it alongside him. Not manage it for him, not take it from him. Alongside him. Do you understand the difference? John looks at her. Someone who carries it with him, Polly says, sees what he sees. Makes decisions the way he makes decisions, with the full weight of what happens if the decision is wrong. Not just the weight of the plan, the weight of the ground under the plan. She looks at him steadily. Is that you, John? Is that what you are now? He does not answer immediately. He looks at the whiskey glass he has not touched, and he thinks about the scorched ground and the covered shapes, and the child's bandaged head, and the look on Callum Lee's face that was not anger and was worse than anger. I don't know yet, he says. That's the honest answer, Polly says. A month ago you'd have said yes without thinking about it. She picks up her tea again. The fact that you don't know yet means you might be. She drinks. The garrison makes its midday sounds around them. Tell Tommy, she says, when you call him. Tell him everything, including the decisions you made that you didn't tell him about. Not because he needs to manage you, because he needs to know that someone else is carrying the weight honestly. She puts the cup down. That's what he actually needs. Not someone to report to him. Someone to carry it with him. John looks at the wall behind the bar. Harry's collection of objects accumulated over 20 years of keeping this pub. The specific and meaningless archaeology of a room that has held everything. Right, he says. He picks up the whiskey. He drinks half of it. He puts it down. He goes to the telephone. The transatlantic line is poor. The quality of a connection stretched across 3,000 miles of ocean in 1925, which is the quality of something that is barely managing its own existence. Tommy's voice comes through in pieces. The words clear, and then breaking, and then clear again. The specific acoustic of distance made audible. John tells him everything. The camp, the 3 dead, the women with burns, Bridie's daughter, the decisions he made that he did not report, the route he was planning for the coal merchant, the reason he believes the bombing happened, and the specific failure in his own thinking that created the reason. He says all of it in the flat, even register of a man making a report rather than a confession. Because Polly is right, and this is not confession. This is the transfer of weight. This is the thing he has been learning to do and is now doing in the most necessary way available. Tommy listens. The line hisses. Birmingham to Chicago across 3,000 miles of ocean. You should have told me, Tommy says. I know. Is the girl going to be all right? They think so. A pause. She'll carry the scar. And Callum Lee. Still with us. John looks at the wall above the telephone. I looked him in the eye and told him the truth. I didn't try to make it better than it is. The line hisses. The ocean between them. Good, Tommy says. His voice comes through clearly on this word. No breaking in it. The distance briefly resolved. That's right. When it goes wrong, you tell the truth. When are you coming home? Soon. I've nearly got what we need. The line hisses again. John holds the receiver against his ear and listens to the distance for a moment. The specific sound of 3,000 miles of ocean between 2 brothers who are carrying something together for the first time. Come home, Tommy, he says. The line hisses. Soon, Tommy says, then the connection is gone. John stands at the telephone for a moment. He puts the receiver back. He goes to the window and looks at Garrison Lane in the Tuesday afternoon. The cobblestones, the terraced houses, the coal smoke, the canal beyond the rooftops. The city doing what it does. Surviving. Making things. Burning things. Going on. He goes back to work. Tommy comes back from America on a Thursday. He arrives at New Street Station at noon on a gray Birmingham day that is doing nothing dramatic, no rain, no particular cold. Just the standard November overcast of a city that has stopped expecting the sky to offer anything and has made its peace with the arrangement. John is on the platform. He is the only one on the platform, which is his choice. He told Arthur to stay at the garrison, told Michael to stay at the offices, told Callum to keep the Lee men on their positions. He is here alone because Tommy coming back from America with what Tommy went to get requires a specific kind of receiving, which is the kind that happens between two people before it happens anywhere else. The train arrives. The platform fills with the steam and the noise of arrival, the specific social disruption of a train disgorging its passengers, which is always slightly chaotic, always slightly more human than the orderly departure suggests it should be. Tommy comes through the steam. He looks tired in the way that long travel produces, not the tiredness of a man who has been sleeping badly, the tiredness of a man who has been thinking without pause for 2 weeks, across several time zones, and has arrived at the end of it. He is carrying a single case. His coat is good. His hat is straight. He looks as Tommy always looks, like a man who has arranged the external evidence of himself with precision, regardless of what the internal situation is doing. He sees John. He comes through the crowd without hurrying. They do not embrace. They stand for a moment on the platform with the steam clearing around them and the other passengers moving past on both sides. "You got it," John says. He says it as a statement, not a question, because Tommy's face when he has what he went for, and Tommy's face when he doesn't, are different. And this is the first one. "Yes," Tommy says. "Capone." "Yes." John nods. He picks up the case. Tommy does not argue about the case, which means he is tired, which is the confirmation John needed. "Cars outside," John says. "Tell me on the way." The Capone arrangement, as Tommy explains it on the drive from New Street to Small Heath, is transactional in the way that all arrangements with men like Capone are transactional, not personal, not ideological, not the product of shared values or mutual respect, but the product of a calculation performed by a very intelligent man about where his interests are best served. Luca Changretta's American support network runs through Capone's Chicago operation, not because Capone is emotionally invested in the Changretta vendetta, he is not, but because Luca's family connections in New York create a political obligation that Capone has been honoring as a cost of doing business. Money, men, the political protection that keeps Luca's Birmingham campaign financially viable. Tommy's argument to Capone was the argument of a man who understands how criminal alliances work, which is that they work until they don't, and they stop working when the cost of the alliance exceeds the benefit. Luca's campaign in Birmingham has been running longer than planned, has produced less than promised, and has cost Capone, in diverted resources, in attention, in the management of New York political relationships that are themselves the product of complicated arrangements, more than Capone budgeted for. Tommy offered an alternative, a Birmingham connection, direct bypassing the New York intermediaries that Capone finds expensive. A future favor of the kind that is deliberately unspecified in its particulars, but specific in its weight. The kind of favor that a man of Capone's intelligence understands immediately and finds more valuable than its face value because it is open-ended. Capone agreed. Within the week, Luca Changretta will be informed that his American support is withdrawn, not reduced. Withdrawn. The money, the men, the political cover, gone. What was the favor, John says? Tommy looks out the window, the Birmingham streets around them, the narrowing as they move from the city center towards Small Heath, the familiar geography of back-to-back houses and factory walls and the canal glimpsed at junctions. A future obligation, he says. Unspecified. How unspecified? Sufficiently. Tommy, it's managed, John. He looks at him briefly. It's a debt I can service when it comes. It won't come in a form we can't manage. John drives. He is quiet for a moment, running the arithmetic of a promise made to Al Capone, the specific weight of it, the open-ended quality that Tommy is characterizing as manageable, and which John believes is manageable but also believes will cost something real when it arrives, which is a thought he files rather than voices because the war is not over, and the debt is future, and the war is present. Right, he says. And Luca, Tommy says, is going to be given a choice. John looks at him. That's what I want to discuss. The garrison. Evening. The three brothers around the table nearest the fire, which is where the three brothers have been having their significant conversations, since they were old enough to have significant conversations, and Harry was keeping this pub. Tommy lays it out. Luca informed of the withdrawal. No money, no reinforcements, no political cover. His Birmingham network reduced to the remnants of what it was 3 months ago. 2 men, the safe house on the Floodgate Street canal arm, a hotel room, no route out of Birmingham, that the Shelby family cannot close if it chooses to close it. The choice. Come to a meeting. Watery Lane, Shelby Company Limited. Midnight. All 3 brothers present. The matter concluded. He has 24 hours to decide, Tommy says. If he runs, we let him run. John says, no. The word arrives in the room and stays there. Tommy looks at him. Arthur looks at him. John looks at Tommy. We don't let him run, John says. We don't let him negotiate. We don't let anyone in London or New York or Naples look at what happened here and conclude that you can walk into this city and try to murder this family and then simply leave when your money runs out. He puts both hands on the table. That's not what this ends like. A man who runs is a man who's no longer a threat, Tommy says. Luca Changretta, without American backing and without a Birmingham network, is alive, John says. Is alive and has a name and has connections and has the memory of what we did to his family, same as he came here with the memory of what we did to his father. He looks at Tommy. You let him go, and you're building the next version of this. In 5 years or 10 years or whenever he's rebuilt enough to try again. That's a long way off. I know it is. John's voice is level, not the hot register of the first weeks, not the forward pressure of a man running on anger, the level register of a man who has done his thinking and is now delivering the result of it. I'm talking about the long way off. I'm talking about what this ends like in a way that doesn't require us to do it again. He looks at Tommy. And I'm talking about the message. Every criminal in this country who's been watching to see what happens when you come for the Shelbys, every man who's been making calculations about whether we're worth the risk, needs to see what happens when you come for the Shelbys and it doesn't work. Tommy is quiet. He looks at John across the table. The fire, the lamp, Harry somewhere in the back. He's right, Tommy, Arthur says. The 3 words arrive simply, without emphasis, without the performance of a man taking sides. Arthur in his corner, his tea in front of him, his eyes on Tommy, stating a fact in the way that Arthur states facts when he has decided they need stating regardless of the consequence. Tommy looks at Arthur. In the operational history of the Shelby family, Arthur has never told Tommy he was wrong about a tactical decision. He has complained, he has worried, he has expressed concern through a variety of indirect methods. He has never looked at Tommy across a table and said he's right. Tommy looks at the table. He is quiet for a long time. The fire settles. Harry moves somewhere behind the bar. We make him come to us, Tommy says. The operation runs across 4 days. Tommy's design, with John's input in the genuine collaboration that it has become. Not John reporting to Tommy and Tommy deciding, but 2 people with different kinds of knowledge about the same problem, working at the problem from both ends until the shape of the solution is clear. Luca's remaining safe houses are identified through the Digbeth ledgers and the turnkeeper, and the accumulated intelligence of 3 weeks of Lee family observation, and they are rated not for violence, but for cash and communications, the financial lifeblood of an operation already starved of its American supply. The raids happen simultaneously on a Thursday morning. 4 locations, Lee men and Peaky Blinders working alongside each other, with the specific coordination of people who have been doing this long enough to have developed a shared language for it. Luca's Birmingham contacts, the restaurants, the import merchants, the small Italian community businesses that have been providing eyes and safe harbor, are visited by Lee men who explain the situation with the specific courtesy of people who want the explanation understood rather than feared. The Changretta operation is finished. The question of what comes next for each of these businesses is a question for each business to answer for itself. And the Shelby family is prepared to be reasonable about the answer. And reasonable is a word being used with its full weight. By Friday evening, Luca Changretta has 2 men, a hotel room on the Hagley Road, no communications infrastructure, and no money that he cannot carry in his coat pockets. The message arrives at the hotel by hand, delivered by a boy who knows nothing about who sent it or what it means. The message is brief. Shelby Company Limited, Watery Lane, midnight, Saturday, all 3 present, come alone, 24 hours. Saturday passes. John spends it with Esme. Not working, he has been working for 3 months without a day that was not working in some form. And Esme has not asked for anything else because Esme does not ask for what she knows is not available. But Saturday, with the operation concluded and the trap set, and nothing to do now except wait for midnight, John goes to the house where Esme has been staying in Small Heath, a terrace on Garrison Lane, 3 streets from the canal, and he sits with her in the kitchen and drinks tea and lets the morning be a morning rather than a tactical problem. She tells him about the camp, the rebuilding, the 2 injured women recovering. Bridie's daughter, whose bandage has come off, and whose scar is visible, and whose response to the scar has been, according to Bridie, to examine it in every available reflective surface with the specific scientific interest of an 8-year-old who has decided the scar is interesting rather than distressing. John receives this and is quiet for a moment. "She's all right then," he says. "She's more than all right," Esme says. "She's decided it makes her look dangerous." John looks at his tea. Something moves in his face that is not quite a smile and is more than one. "Good," he says. "Good." Esme watches him across the table. She has been watching him for 3 months, with the complete attention she brings to everything, and she has been watching a thing change in him that she has no exact name for in any language she speaks. The closest she gets is a Romani word that translates approximately as the weight a man carries when he knows what he is, and has stopped arguing about it. She thinks he is approaching that. She thinks he is not there yet. She thinks he might get there. Tonight, she says, yes. And after tonight? John looks at her. After tonight we find out what we've built, he says. Whether it holds without a war to hold it together. Esme is quiet for a moment. It'll hold, she says. Not as comfort, as assessment. John nods. They drink their tea. The kitchen. The morning, the specific ordinary quality of a Saturday that is also the last day before something ends. Outside, Small Heath does what Small Heath does. Makes its noise, moves its people, burns its coal, keeps going. John drinks his tea and lets the morning be what it is. At 11 o'clock that night, Arthur finds John in the garrison. He sits beside him. He orders nothing. Harry pours anyway. They sit with their drinks and the fire in the 30 minutes that remain before they need to be at Watery Lane. "How's the shoulder?" Arthur says. "Fine." John. "Manageable." Arthur nods. He drinks. He sets the glass down and looks at it. "I've been praying," he says, "for all of us. For tonight, I know. You don't think it does anything. I think," John says, "that you doing it does something. For you. Which does something for us. So yes." Arthur looks at him. The expression of a man receiving something he did not expect in the form he expected it. "That's the most Tommy thing you've ever said." "Don't tell him." Arthur almost smiles. "Right." He finishes his drink. He stands. "Let's go finish it." John stands. He puts on his coat. He buttons it. He checks the Webley, cylinder, load, the specific routine of a man who has been doing this check for long enough that it is automatic but has not allowed it to become careless. He puts it in his right coat pocket. They go. The Shelby Company Limited offices on Watery Lane are empty of staff by 10 o'clock. The building at this hour has the specific quality of a working space after the work is stopped. Desks with their papers squared. Lamps extinguished except the ones that have been left deliberately burning. The smell of the day's business still in the air. Ink and coal and the faint chemical smell of the ledger paper that Michael orders from a specific supplier in London because he finds the weight of it correct for the figures that go on it. The smell of a legitimate operation, which is real. The legitimacy is real. The business is real, and which exists alongside everything else the building has been used for. The two things occupying the same space without contradiction, which is the Shelby family's fundamental operational achievement, and which Tommy has been building toward since before any of this started. Charlie Strong is outside with 2 Lee men. They are on the canal side, the towpath approach, the direction from which a man with sense might try to arrive unseen. Charlie has been told to let Luca through if Luca comes alone, and to let John know if Luca comes with anyone, which Luca will not do, because Luca Changretta is a man with a specific kind of pride, and the pride will bring him through the front door on Watery Lane with no one beside him. Michael is 2 blocks away watching the street. He has a runner, one of the Lee boys, 15 years old, fast, who will be at the building in 90 seconds if Michael sends him. The police inspector whose cooperation Tommy has maintained for 2 years through a specific arrangement that does not require documentation, has been informed that nothing unusual is happening in the Watery Lane area tonight. He has confirmed his agreement with this assessment. Inside, the 3 brothers wait. Tommy is at the main desk. He is seated, which is a choice. A man standing projects readiness. A man seated at his own desk projects ownership. And ownership is the statement Tommy wants the room to make before anything is said in it. The Webley is on the desk in front of him, visible, which is another choice. Not concealed, not drawn, present, the way a tool is present on a workman's bench. Available, purposeful, not performing threat because it does not need to perform what it is. The lamp on the desk throws its circle of amber light across the papers and the gun, and Tommy's hands, which are flat on the desk and still. The rest of the room is shadow. Arthur is against the right wall. He is in the dark beyond the lamp's reach, the sawn-off in both hands, his back to the wall, his feet planted at the width of his shoulders. His eyes are closed. His lips are moving, the interior conversation he maintains, the running negotiation with something he cannot see that has become, across these months, less of a discipline and more of a reflex. He has stopped trying to reconcile what he is with what he does in moments like this. He has decided that God, if God is paying attention, understands the arithmetic of protecting your family. And if God is not paying attention, then the conversation costs him nothing except the comfort of it, which is sufficient. John is against the left wall. He is deeper in the shadow than Arthur, further from the lamp, further from the desk, positioned at the angle that gives him the longest line of sight to the door, and the widest field in his peripheral vision. He has been in this position for 15 minutes without moving, which the John Shelby of 3 months ago could not have managed, and which this John Shelby manages with the specific stillness of a man who has learned the difference between patience as endurance and patience as weapon. The Webley is in his right hand, low at his side, held with the loose grip of a man who has been holding weapons long enough to know that tension in the hand is the enemy of accuracy. The Leon field is not here. This is not a space for a rifle, and he has known it since they chose the location. The straight razor is in his left jacket pocket. He put it there by habit, not calculation, and he has not taken it out, because it is his, and it belongs there, and tonight is not a night for examining the things that belong where they belong. He is not thinking about the plan. The plan is made and understood, and does not require further thinking. He is thinking about nothing in the specific way that is available to men who have trained themselves out of the reflex to fill silence with thought. The specific mental stillness that is not emptiness, but readiness. The mind in the position of a man at a window, watching a road, not anticipating, simply watching. He hears Luca's footsteps on Watery Lane at 3 minutes to midnight. He knows them because he has been listening to the street for 15 minutes, and the street has told him everything that belongs to it. And this is the thing that doesn't belong. A single set of footsteps, measured, unhurried, the specific rhythm of a man who has decided something and is walking toward the decision. He does not move. He does not signal Tommy. Tommy hears them too. The door opens at midnight. Luca Changretta comes into the room, and he looks immediately like a man who knows where he is and why he is here, and has made his peace with both facts without making his peace with the outcome. He is dressed well. The charcoal wool, the shoes that have now walked Birmingham cobblestones enough times to carry the evidence of it. His face is the face of a man who has not slept adequately in 3 weeks, and has declined to let this show in anything except the specific quality of his eyes, which are tired and precisely focused. The eyes of a man running on the last of something. He has a Colt 1911 in his right hand. He looks at Tommy at the desk, he looks at the Webley on the desk, and at Tommy's hands flat beside it, and at the lamp and the shadow beyond the lamp. "You won," he says. Tommy says, "Yes." The word carries no triumph in it. It carries the weight of a man stating a concluded arithmetic, the weight of the thing itself, not the feeling about the thing, which is Tommy's register for the things that cost the most. Luca looks at the desk, at the papers squared and the lamp burning, and the room that is a legitimate business and everything else simultaneously. "How?" he says. Not how did you do it. He knows how they did it, in its broad shape. How in the sense of the specific origin, the place where his plan began to fail. The question of a meticulous man who needs to understand where the meticulous plan came apart. Tommy considers the question. He considers whether to answer it. Then he does, briefly, without embellishment, because Tommy Shelby is a man who respects a genuine question, and Luca's question is genuine. "The call," he says. "The farm in Worcestershire. John, who was supposed to be the first to fall. The hay cart. The half-second that changed the architecture of everything Luca built. Luca absorbs this. 1 second, he says. 1 second, Tommy says. Luca looks at the shadow beyond the lamp's reach. His professional instincts are still functioning. The instinct of a man who has survived long enough to sense the geometry of a room before it declares itself. He knows the room contains more than Tommy. Arthur steps into the light. The sawn-off leveled both barrels, the specific authority of a weapon that does not require accuracy at this distance. Then John. He steps out of the shadow on the left wall, and the lamp catches him, the coat, the Webley at his side, The specific quality of stillness that is not the stillness of a man holding a position, but of a man who has arrived at a position so completely that holding it requires nothing. Luca looks at him. The look is long. It is the look of a man seeing, in the flesh, the foundational failure of everything he built, not the abstraction of a plan that failed, the specific face of the reason it failed. The man who was supposed to be dead in the first night, who has been alive through every subsequent night, who has been dismantling Luca's Birmingham operation from the inside out, with the patience that Luca would never have credited him with. You, Luca says, quietly. Me, John says. The building around them. The distant sound of the canal, water against the embankment wall, the patient knock of it, the city's permanent background. The lamp. Luca looks at John with the look of a man who is finishing a calculation and has arrived at its final term. His pride is intact. This is visible. It is the one thing on him that has not been diminished by 3 months of systematic defeat. He will not beg. He will not negotiate. He came through the front door alone at midnight because the pride demanded it, and the pride demands this too. He raises the Colt, not toward Tommy, not toward Arthur, toward John. The origin of the failure, the face of the thing that went wrong, the man whose survival made everything else possible. If Luca Changretta has to end here, he will end reaching for the root of it. John shoots first. He has been ready since Luca walked through the door. The Webley at his side, the loose grip, the 15 minutes of stillness in the shadow, all of it has been in service of this moment, which is not a fast draw, not a reflex, but the completion of a readiness that was established before Luca started moving. He is not faster than Luca, he is earlier. He was ready before the movement began, which is not the same quality as speed, and produces a better outcome than speed in the specific arithmetic of men raising weapons in confined spaces. 2 shots. The center of the chest, the way Tommy taught him. 2 shots, John. Center of a man, you don't stop to watch what happens. From 20 years ago in a different Birmingham, 2 boys in a yard, one older in teaching and one younger in learning, neither of them knowing what the lesson would eventually be used for. Luca Changretta goes down. He goes down the way men actually go down when the arithmetic resolves. Not with theater, not with a final word, quickly and heavily, and with the complete physical conviction of a body that has received the information that it is finished. He does not get up. John walks forward. He stands over Luca for a moment. He looks at the man on the floor, the charcoal wool, the good shoes, the Colt that has fallen beside the hand that held it. He looks at this for long enough to have looked at it. Then he looks up. Tommy is standing from the desk. Arthur has lowered the sawn off. Both of them are looking at John. John holsters the Webley. Right, he says. Let's go. The garrison. Dawn. Harry, woken from the room above the pub, comes downstairs in his shirt sleeves and finds 3 Shelby brothers on 3 bar stools at the bar. He looks at them. He looks at the time, which is 5:15 in the morning. He reaches under the bar. He puts 3 glasses on the wood. He pours. He goes to the back without saying anything, which is Harry's great professional virtue and the reason the garrison has been the garrison for as long as it has been. The 3 glasses sit untouched on the bar. Nobody speaks. The fire has burned down to its embers, but the room holds the warmth of it, the specific stored warmth of a building that has been burning coal since yesterday morning, and retains it in its walls and its floor and its accumulated decades of use. Outside, the canal, the factory district. The first sounds of Small Heath beginning its Tuesday. A cart on the cobblestones. A factory whistle 2 streets over announcing the early shift. The specific and particular music of a city that does not stop for anything. Then Arthur. We should go to church. John. We should sleep. Tommy. We should work. We're a week behind on the Gloucester contracts. A pause. A beat of silence that contains all 3 responses simultaneously, and the specific absurdity of all 3 responses being equally true. Then all 3 of them laugh, not politely, not the controlled register of men managing their responses properly. The laugh of men who have been frightened for a sustained period and have arrived at the other side of the fear, the specific involuntary release of 3 months of sustained tension finding the only exit available to it, which is this, which is laughter in the garrison at 5 in the morning with 3 untouched whiskeys on the bar. It fills the room. It fills the garrison the way the garrison fills when something genuine is in it, which it has been before and will be again. Arthur picks up his glass. He holds it up without speaking, a toast without words, a toast that needs no words, because the words are all in the room already. in the walls, in the specific warmth of the place, and the specific quality of the morning, and the specific fact of 3 brothers on 3 bar stools, alive, here, unbroken. Tommy picks up his glass. John picks up his glass. They drink. 3 scenes. No dialogue. 1. Esme Shelby at the Lee camp outside Birmingham. Early morning, the camp coming awake around her. Fires being built, children emerging from caravans, the horses moving at the eastern edge. She hears a motorcycle on the road that borders the camp. One of John's runners, she knows by the engine note. She has learned all their engines the way she learns things that matter, which is completely. She watches the rider come. He stops. He nods. She closes her eyes. She keeps them closed for a moment. Not prayer, not quite, something older than prayer, the Romani interior practice that has no Gorgio name. Then she opens them. She calls to her children in the camp in the Romani tongue, and they come running from 4 directions at once, which is how her children always come when she calls, which is one of the fixed and reliable things in her world, which is enough. 2. Michael Gray, walking through the Shelby Company Limited offices in the Tuesday morning daylight, past the empty desks, past the squared papers, past the lamp that is still burning from the night because nobody extinguished it. He reaches the closed door at the end of the corridor, the room where it happened, the specific door. He stops. His hand goes to the handle. He holds it there for a moment, not opening it, simply holding the handle of the closed door. Then he takes his hand away. He turns. He walks back through the offices toward his own desk, toward the Gloucester contracts that are a week behind, toward the specific future he is building that is not Tommy's future for him, but his own, which is a different thing, and which this morning feels, for the first time, like a door he is capable of opening himself. 3. The garrison, empty now. Harry sweeping the floor with the methodical patience of a man who has been sweeping this floor for 20 years and expects to sweep it for 20 more. 3 whiskey glasses on the bar. Not empty, not full, the level of men who drank enough to drink and not enough to be drinking. Harry wipes them down, one at a time. He holds each one up to the lamp briefly, checking the glass. The professional habit. He replaces them under the bar. He takes his broom to the far corner. Outside on Garrison Lane, Small Heath makes its morning, the costermonger on the corner. The children going to school, the factory whistles layering over each other in the 7 o'clock air, the canal boats on the cut moving their cargo through the city's industrial belly as they have always moved it. As they will move it, after all of this is long finished, and remembered only in the specific way that Small Heath remembers things, which is not in documents or monuments, but in the collective knowledge of a community that survives by knowing what it has survived. The Peaky Blinders. Still here, still standing, by order of, let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.